It's thought the human race is where they are is because of our advanced prefrontal cortex. That gives us all this ability to solve problems, put a man on the moon, cure smallpox, all these sorts of things. And the majority of children under 12 don't have too much of that complex thinking brain working. So what does this mean? So unfortunately, if something does go wrong in a child's life, they still have feelings. They still process what's happening to them, but it often comes out in very different ways to an adult. Now, I did talk about some of the physical symptoms, but they can be quite different for children. So, for example, children might have an upset tummy. Certainly, a headache is a sign of an adult. Throwing up tends to be more common in young children. It's relatively rare for adults with, say, severe anxiety to soil themselves, but a lot of young children do that when they're really anxious. And sometimes falling asleep in class. So there certainly are some quite big differences. And one of the reasons for this is that if you feel, say, nervous, but if you don't have that thinking brain working and you can't process what's happening, well then these things don't necessarily come out as thoughts. They come out as very physical and very bodily symptoms for people. And so often if your body is in some kind of pain, that's your body trying to tell you something. And I think we need to get better at recognizing when our body is in pain, what does this mean? Now, of course, for those that work in primary schools, and I'm assuming most of the people listening today do, we know that children tend to get a lot sicker than adults do. So, for example, children have roughly 5 to 7 colds per year, and adults have 1 to 3. So, children will naturally be more emotional, and they naturally have some tantrums. If it's a one-off or fairly infrequent, that's not signs of a mental illness. That is a sign of just normal development. And we have got to get this away from this idea that young children can be absolutely perfect and always well behaved. They don't have so much that thinking brain there, so sometimes they do get really upset over things that an adult would say it's not so important. But when there is a consistent pattern of behavior, that's when we need to start looking at this.